Our next presentation is going to be by Dr. Gordon. I met Dr. Gordon actually through Steve Stivers, Congressman Stivers, and we ended up incorporating a foundation called Resurrecting Lives. She has a long history in the medical director of the rehab services at the Memorial Hospital, medical director of Honda of America. How she got interested in some of this is she had a friend, and she may tell you a little bit about this, who lost a son and got involved with the VA. So then she spent some time with the VA outpatient clinic at the Chalmers P. Wiley Center, and she ended up having a TBI herself, which helped her have an intimate understanding of what happens with TBI and how it affects your life. She has putting together a documentary that she is funding herself that is an amazing documentary that will really, it talks to medical directors, it talks to veterans, it talks to a whole host of experts. How can we deal with TBI and our returning veterans, which is going to be one of our most serious medical issues coming up. And so I'm really honored to have her come. And her role is to frame the issue. I kind of put that as, what is the issue? What is our challenge? How do these war wounds affect veterans coming back, many of which then lead them to involvement in the criminal justice system? And so she's going to set the challenge up for us. Stivers has sort of already pre-delivered the national answer, but then we will have some of the state answers following her presentation. Dr. Gordon?
While I'm saying my thank yous, I want to thank, first of all, Justice Stratton for having me back here. This is a great conference to be at with movers and shakers who are interested in veterans and really doing a lot. And when I looked back at this being the fourth Grand Wraparound Veteran Summit, we've really done a lot in the last 4 years. We've got a long way to go, but we've got a lot going for us. So thank you so much, Justice Stratton. I know that Congressman Stivers just stepped out, but I wanted to thank him. He's actually ultimately responsible for my being here, so you can all blame him. The reason being is that several years ago, I was talking to him about some of the ideas I had about veterans, and Steve Stivers said to me, you know, you need to get to know Justice Stratton. And when I first met her, I thought, why? I mean, this woman is Grace Kelly. You know, I come from a place of Youngstown, Ohio, and not typically the same motivations and ways to do things as Judge Millage will tell me. I mean, I'm a warrior, she's a peacemaker. But somehow along the way, Steve Stivers thought that that would work, and it has. We kind of call ourselves Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday, and I'll let you all decide who is who. We may be getting back to that in just a moment as Jeremy hands me my little clicker there. Okay, thank you so much. And I wanted to say a special thank to Pete Miller, who is my little personal videographer right now. I think all of you know Pete. He's at every single National Guard event, Justice Stratton's events, Veterans Court. He puts out a newsletter. He is tireless for all things veterans and military. We thank him so much for being here. We're going to talk a little bit about the nonprofit, the Resurrecting Lives, and I came up with that particular title only because our documentary is Operation Resurrection. I came up with the idea of resurrection because in interviewing approximately 150 of our young service personnel returning from Iraq and Afghanistan, I realized that those with traumatic brain injury really needed it to be resurrected. You know, there was that blank look in their face. There was that inability to understand new data. There was, I'm here but not quite here, look in their eyes. And that's where we came up with Operation Resurrection. And then a gentleman by the name of David Rockefeller happened to view the trailer over Thanksgiving and had one of his people call me up and say, you know what, we'd really like you to form your own nonprofit. And you could be very narrow and very deep because there's no veterans group out there dealing strictly with traumatic brain injury. So, you know, I'd been to Hollywood, I'd had lots of things stolen out there. I thought I better check this out. This may just be another call, but it actually was the Rockefeller Institute, and they were very helpful in setting up the business plan and the website and all of that. I'm now trying to find them for the money that they had promised, and that's to be continued. I may need to enlist the Ohio National Guard for that at some point in time. So that's how we came up with Resurrecting the Warrior. We are the 99% solution. We are the 99% that said, we'll go to the mall. I can do that, President Bush, no problem. Instead of being the 1% who went to war. Who are we? We became a nonprofit on July 28th of this year. No small task, due very much to the congressmen nationally from our area, both senators. We actually had senators and congressmen from Missouri, North Carolina, and Florida also helping us kind of push this through. When I was told by a member of the IRS that it may take up to 2 years and no harm, no foul because nothing was happening, right? And I said, every 36 hours, one of our veterans commits suicide. And I don't consider that no harm, no foul. And then I had my little veterans every 10 days call and say how many of their friends had died and to thank the IRS for helping to push through our status as soon as possible, and they did. So it was very, very helpful. So we are up and running. Our mission is narrow and deep. We are here to define what the traumatic brain injury is from the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, and to define the treatment protocols for it. We are here as an advocacy group, as an educational group. We are here for the soldiers and their families, and we hope to bring the 99% of the population in line with us. So those of you who may know me know that when I went to the VA the first time, it was kind of under the guise of, I'm here to help. I can save you. Joan of Arc, Catholic school, all of the above. And so I went in there, and after viewing the first 3 heroes that I spoke to, I said, you know what? I came here to do this for you, and I'm leaving here this day, day 1, to do this for our nation. Because I realized that the resolve, the integrity, the honor, the commitment of these young people that I just saw the first day was worth saving. And we needed to do that. So we now have a duality of mission. We are here because we believe citizens can and should help. We are also here because we believe we owe it to our nation to help. And one only needs to see the dedication of people like Steve Stivers to realize that the military training does seem to have its flavor in Washington as well. We have come a long way. Everybody here has said PTS and not PTSD, and hooray for us, or hoorah, or oorah, or whatever your particular thing may be. We have dropped the disorder. And that is in no small part due to people like General Corelli, General Ashenhurst. I'm actually thinking of a second documentary. It's called The About Face of America's Generals. You'll be contacted soon as I get enough money together. But it's been a total change. And the way that the DOD deals with this now has just been phenomenal as far as I'm concerned. I've never seen such a turnaround of compassion in technology and, you know, kind of a saving grace. So that really is amazing. We now call it post-traumatic stress. And we realize that it's not just from war, it can be from very many other things. And particularly involved with our particular foundation is the fact that post-traumatic stress is probably a traumatic brain injury. And we've been kind of saying this all along because we could see things that were happening. We now have 2 major studies, one that has shown that it is a chemical imbalance of the hyperexcitation that is built up, primarily found in children who were abused. And that many of the individuals who develop PTS after service were actually abused as children. But when you come in with a fractured arm or a fractured leg, you don't think about what the infant or the 2-year-old or the 4-year-old has had done to their brain as well. Shaken baby and all of the above. So there is that first correlation where they are finding anatomical changes from early on. And the second thing that we're finding out again is that the chemical hyperexcitation to keep that fight or flight going is really high. So we in the TBI world consider PTS a subset of traumatic brain injury. We've all read about the serious consequences of the psychotropic drugs. And when you mix them with opiates, particularly oxycodone, which we need to get out of the military, OxyContin needs to be gone from the formulary, even though it is a $10 billion business. It needs to be gone because it is 30 times more addictive than heroin. So we don't want to take a young brain that's already been battered, already been damaged, throw opiates at them, and then psychotropic drugs. So we are realizing these problems, again, at a very fast pace. And lastly, we're here to kind of get rid of the stigma. You know, we don't want a stigma for TBI or PTS because, as I tell my heroes, if you didn't engage the enemy then, what were you doing over there? If you were engaging the enemy and driving down that street and that IED went off, you have a problem that we can help. And the sooner that you help and help yourself, the more whole you will be. I realize that PTS leads to incarceration. We know that it's often a form of combat trauma. We found out just last week that it's also a part of childhood abuse. You get aggression, and again, if you think of these are survival characteristics, okay? The child who is being abused at home has to develop survival characteristics or they're not going to make it into adolescence and adulthood. So a lot of these chemicals that are really rolling around in their brain and kind of reverberating in a pathway of aggression are done for survival. We really are so blessed here in Ohio to have Justice Stratton bringing in the Veterans Courts as part of the mental health docket. And when I first heard that at our first meeting, I thought, oh my golly, that is brilliant. Now I need to know something about mental health. So I really do appreciate it. And I'm not sure that you all appreciate how well Ohio is thought of throughout the nation, but when I give speeches and presentations, we are talked about, Justice Stratton and the Veterans Courts, the documentary, Steve Stivers, many of our congressmen, and definitely the Ohio National Guard. It is felt to be one of the forerunners in the nation. And of course, everybody asks me, is it true that there's a woman in charge? And I said the next book will be Real Generals Wear Heels. Okay, so TBI is the signature wound of Iraq and Afghanistan. We know it's silent. We know that now it's estimated that about 500,000 people have that. Of all the ones deployed, we know that 1 out of 4 to 5 will have TBI, 1 out of 5 will have PTS, and now that we know that it's kind of a combined syndrome, we have that PDS, or the mixed post-deployment syndrome, and we need to address all of these issues. Okay, no outward signs with TBI. So what we need to do is to get the citizenry involved, because you need to be alerted at work, at church, in the community, in the home, in the ER, that there may be difficulties that you need to be the first line of defense for our returning hero. One of the issues that became so important just recently was the fact that only 33 to 36% are actually receiving their benefits from OIF and OEF at the Veterans Administration hospitals, and a lot of that is due to the logistics that we've all talked about, transportation, gasoline, unemployment, all of the above. But it was that particular key that led Justice Stratton and I to talk to the ORAS people, and whoever Brian Lovins is, I cannot thank him enough for sending me one email, and the one email said, would you like to change some of the questions that we ask? And I thought, yes, because the questions were, are you being treated for TBI? Most of them aren't even diagnosed. You know, have you taken medication? Again, most of them are not being treated. So we changed it, and I talked to Dr. Debbie Misek, whom I just love. She's the chief of staff down in Chillicothe, and she and I go way back. We kind of terrorized OSU together in our training days. And Debbie said, well, why don't we use the DOD? You know, they have you been injured? Have you been in an IED attack? Has your vehicle rolled over? Do you have memory changes? And I'm sending this back to this little gentleman on email, Brian, I'd really like these. These are what, you know, Justice Stratton and Dr. Misek and I think would be great. And like 2 days later, he says, we are incorporating them. I thought it would be 4 years from now. It was like 4 minutes. So I cannot thank you all enough. And it's that speed that I love. I bet you don't know that about me. But I really like an avalanche over a glacier any day. I'll take my chances, I'll tell you. We know that the consequences of PTS are the same as untreated TBI. You know, the substance abuse issues, and you can see them all there. The thing that is so important about this is you can't get out of this yourself. It really becomes an impossible issue to come out of this yourself. The second thing that's very obvious by this list here is that somebody else is going to bump into you at some point in time. Most likely law enforcement, perhaps emergency room physicians, and the justice system. So that's why this is such a perfect segue for identifying who has the problems. Again, all of these issues come at great cost to the family, to the person, and to society. It is all of our problems. Substance abuse, again, OSU reported this first. Dr. John Corrigan down at OSU found out that 80% of the individuals who have a traumatic brain injury will self-medicate within the first year. And that was before. We kind of added up to 90% now because of the little extra added caffeine drinks that are so popular in Iraq and Afghanistan, where staying awake means staying alive, literally. And I think you all probably saw in the news just this past week where a young woman died of an overdose of her monster drink. She had about 12 during the course of a day, which is, by the way, when I was doing my histories at the VA, the norm. 12 to 15 Monster drinks a day.